So today we want to share with you a little bit of information about the things that we've been through and are going through in setting up our bed and breakfast business and future weddings business, so that if anybody is interested in doing the same thing, we can share a little bit of our experience and maybe help you to think about some of the things that you might want to be thinking about. Now, of course, our experience is unique and neither of us are an expert in any of these areas. So we'll just simply tell you what we are doing and what we have been through, with the caveat that experiences are different, regions of France are different, laws change, and that your situation may not be the same as ours. So hopefully you still get a little bit out of it. So the first thing to think about is, what is the zoning for your particular property? Our zoning is called Zoning Natura 2000. And what that means is that we're in a nature zone. So officially, we are not zoned to have offices, to have services, to have a bed and breakfast, to have camping and leisure activities, to build new buildings on our property, to have any residential dwellings or tourist activities. So essentially everything that we would want to do, we're not really zoned to do, because we're zoned to protect nature. So any bed and breakfast and wedding activities that would be planned for our particular zone would require a detailed application to the powers that be, in this case, a nature committee, for them to decide whether or not we would in fact at all be allowed to pursue these things. And the regional architect, known as the ABF, would also have to oversee this and approve it.
And we ganged up with a couple of Brits that have been living here in France for almost 20 years. But of course they're architects, but they know about the French papers, the forms, and how you fill it out and so on, which people like us do not know.
So it's pretty well known in France that you can run what's called a chambre d'hôte, which is a bed and breakfast. And if you do it correctly, then you aren't subject to all of the same rules that a hotel would be required to fulfill. And I believe two of those rules are that you can rent only 5 rooms or up to 15 people.
Yes.
For most people, it's fine. They can go ahead and rent out rooms in their existing home, 5 rooms or up to 15 people at a time, without having to conform to the regulations of a hotel. But if you happen to be in a nature zone like we are, you still have to create a special application to get permission. If you got permission to go ahead and open a bed and breakfast and run it, it does not mean that you would then also be able to run weddings on your estate, because it's completely different permissions that you need to also do weddings. And some of those are, for example, would need to make sure that your sewage system can handle the number of people that would be on your premises. For example, with us, we want to use our orangery as the place where we would have reception dinners. Well, at the moment, our orangery does not even have bathrooms. So we would need bathrooms for the orangery for all of the people, and the sewage system for those bathrooms would have to be approved and specially designed to make sure it can handle what we would be handling. And in addition to that, we would also need to make sure that our the properties would be accessible for wheelchairs. So for example, over there, we don't have a ramp leading up to the orangery, but we would absolutely need one before we would be able to be licensed to have weddings here.
It's not so easy, because at the same time that you want to build a ramp, you cannot really put it in front of the building, because the building is a nice old type of French building, and they don't just allow you to change the optics of the exterior. So the challenge is to find a way to make a ramp that is basically not very visible in the landscape.
Mm-hmm. And additionally to that, we would need to make sure that we had a liquor license, because we would not be allowed to serve beverages, alcoholic beverages, unless we have a restaurant grade level liquor license for that.
A lot of people know this already, but for those who don't, if you want to serve alcohol, you also have to serve food with alcohol when you sell it to guests.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the other top of mind permissions or concession we would need to make is that we would need to be absolutely sure that we had adequate parking for all of the guests that would come. And that, as with most things in France, would need to be approved.
Yes. So when you want to open a bed and breakfast business, you talk to the bank and the accountant. These two instances are the ones who will create the business for you. Of course, the accountant, he is the one who creates the business, and once he's done that, you will get a so-called KBIS number, and this KBIS number will be forwarded straight to the bank from the accountant, and the bank will then open your business account. And after you have opened your business account with the bank, you are going to have to transfer money. So in our case, the accountant said it just has to be a symbolic amount, but he said we each have to transfer 1,000 euros to the business account as a kind of we open the business and this is the value of this business. The money is not being paid back to us, it just has to stay on that account in the future. And so when the bank receives the KBIS number, has opened the account, and the money has gone in from each and every one of us, then the bank can continue to finish the setup together with the accountant. And then finally, of course, we will be able to add our KBIS number to any invoice that we would create in the business.
Mm-hmm. So there are lots of different business structures that you can use to set up your business in France. And in fact, when we were planning to buy our property as a business, we were not thinking of the one that we ultimately went with. So the one that our accountant recommended we go with is called an SAS. And that is a Société par Actions Simplifiées, which is my bad French. But essentially, it's like an English limited company. So this is where you protect your personal assets and they can't be seized, and only what you put into the business can be lost, essentially. So we've set our business up as an SAS. So when we bought our chateau, we never intended actually to buy it as individuals or privately. We intended to buy it as a business. And that was for tax reasons and also for inheritance reasons. But because of a timing topic, which we'll talk about, that did not happen. So when we came to the final meeting where we were buying our chateau, it ended up we bought the chateau privately as individuals.
So the first time we went to sign the compromis, which was back in June last year, we made it clear to the notaire that we want to open a business in in the same time as we buy the place. And you can do that. You can also get a lawyer to do it for you. But in France, you don't necessarily need a lawyer because the notaire does the work anyway. The lawyer would just be nice to talk to. And so, whereas I thought it would not be necessary to engage a lawyer with this, and Karen didn't seem to have much to say about that. So we just went ahead and told the notaire what it is we want. And he said, yes, I will create the business. Turns out in the end, when we get to the second signature, that he has not created the business like he promised. And so during that second meeting, we had about a 20-minute discussion over this, where we were promised that he would contact an accountant right after this meeting and set us up so that we could get the business created anyway.
Mm-hmm. And I would mention that the reason we were doing this at the same time was because if he could do all of this paperwork all together, it was less expensive than setting up the business, buying privately and then setting up the business later. So, when we were in this meeting, it was that everyone was speaking French except Bo and and then our realtor was translating to us. And so I recorded the meetings, of course, and we went back and reviewed, and there was a period where we were saying, okay, but what about the business? What about the business? We're not doing this today. How is that going to happen? And it was the notaire's answer that no, we start over with that after this meeting. And you could hear Bo and I saying, we don't understand. Can we have some more clarity? Because we just weren't clear, okay, does that mean all new fees? Or, what happens after this? And we were reassured, no, we're going to meet with some English-speaking accountants. He's going to come with us to be sure that we actually have the absolute best scenario for us set up, and that would be fine. And of course, so we signed the papers, very happy to have the chateau. And then we started to call the notaire to set up these meetings and check his availability.
And writing.
And no answer, no return calls, nothing at all. I even hired a private secretary because she spoke French to be able to call and speak to his assistant and make it clear, oh, hey, we need to do these meetings that you promised. And she never got a call back, never got an answer. And basically we were ghosted by the notaire that was handling this business. And we do not think by accident.
No.
And
we had it confirmed by the former owners, the sellers, who were also told by the same notaire that he was going to help us with this. And it was also their understanding that it was not going to be a big event after the second signing.
Yeah, and I think we wanted to include this part of the story as a little bit of a watch out. We did not get a lawyer to help us with this, and maybe we should have, but maybe we should have also, just made sure that the paperwork, stopped and said, okay, no, we're not signing today until this paperwork is done. And probably that's what we
should have done, but he was insuring us in this meeting. And like Karen said, she taped the meeting. We have a 20-minute discussion, but a few months later when we talked to the accountant, and he says, I would like to see that in writing. And we didn't have it in writing, so there you go.
Yeah, and he called our notaire, and because he is an accountant and he's French, his call went through, and he actually did get in touch with our notaire, and the notaire said that the notaire told a much different part of the story than we did, which was that we knew that all of the fees would begin again after this meeting, and he never promised to do this and that. So So if we wanted to proceed setting up the business in the way that we had initially planned to, it would have been, I don't remember how many thousands.
About 18 to 20,000 euros.
Yeah, 18 to 20,000 to do it after the fact.
That was a shock.
That was a big shock.
Maybe somebody sitting there thinking, you got to sue this guy because we have it on tape, but we don't have it in writing, and here you don't get anywhere if you don't have it in writing.
And we also, to his point, we do have it on tape that he said, no, everything begins again after this meeting. What that meant was not communicated. So, there's no suing. He
was talking like we wanted to hear him talk, but he never really said, I will do this for free. And he didn't write a piece of paper saying that either. So we don't really have anything that we can use against him, except we want to explain to other people that might go through the same process. Be careful. Yeah. Because, and if you want to make absolutely sure, just hire a lawyer. It will cost you 5,000 euros maybe, but everything you want will be set and ready when you come to sign.
Yeah. So since that particular arrangement did not work out, now we are creating, as mentioned before, an SAS, and as individuals, privately, we will rent our chateau to the SAS. So essentially, we are landlords of our private chateau, and we are renting it to the business, Queen's Escape, to use as a business. And so that's our arrangement now, and that will work out just fine for us too.
Yeah. Normally, you would think that when you earn money by renting out the rooms, you can take this money and just spend it for other stuff, renovations or whatever you want to do. But you can't really do that. So in France, they have rules about this too. And the rule is that you can pay yourself as you go through the year up to basically it cannot be 23,000 euros, it has to be less than that. So the accountant said you can say 22,500. So we say, okay, but what if we make 60,000? And he said, that's not a problem. Obviously you get the rest after the year is over, and they do all the accountants.
Yeah.
So we're in a situation now where we say, okay, so we want to pay ourselves 22,500 euros, and then after the year is over and all the everything is calculated, there might be a dividend that we get out of this. Maybe not. We will have to see.
Yeah. So the takeaway for me is that Sabo and I split that. Let's call it 22,000 for easy math. So let's say we split that. So we're both entitled to 11,000 per year. Could be so little less than 1,000 a month, that we can take tax-free from the business earnings. But we cannot take more than that at any time during the year at all. And if the business isn't making that, then obviously we can't take it anyway because it's not going to be there. And so if let's say that we do make this money each month and we both pay ourselves, 1,000 or less a month, the rest is in the account and it is used to pay the bills, just like with any business. So all of our monthly bills, plus any renovations we do, plus anything that we purchase for the business, this all comes out of the profit. So at the end of the year, there's a pretty good chance there's not going to be any dividends left to split. It just depends on your spending and your situation. But in our situation, I would expect that, the business, especially in early stages, it's going to eat it up. So Initially we were thinking that we would be able to take money right off the top each month as we liked, as we went, and that's a no-go. Because above and beyond that 23,000, you get taxed on those withdrawals. Below it, you don't get taxed on that money.
So you can pay yourself as a full-time employee in your own business, in your own castle, yes. But if you do that, you have to remember that there is something called Social Security as well in France. Social Security is a combination of healthcare and retirement scheme that has to be paid every month. And depending on the income, of course, but you could expect I would say close to 1,000 euros per person if you were to be fully employed by your own company. So in the end, the social security would be eaten up by the money that the business is paying to you every month.
Yeah. So you could do it, but then you're essentially paying France and yourself later, sorta. I mean, you're getting healthcare and you're getting retirement and all of that, but if you have that elsewhere, then you'd be duplicating it. So we don't have to charge our guests the 20% VAT that you have to charge in most cases here in France and in Europe, because until you reach 80,000 euros in income, you don't have to charge it. Now, once you pass that, then you do have to charge the VAT. But just running a bed and breakfast, probably for our first year, we don't expect to really achieve that amount. Now, if we were doing weddings in the future, we do think we would probably hit that, and then we would need to charge VAT.
Yeah.
So the most pressing thing that we need to do this year has to do with our zoning. So our property, as mentioned before, falls into the Natura 2000 zoning rules, and we need to go ahead and get our application in to be able to improve the orangery and the ways so that we can host weddings in the future. And the reason that it has to be done this year is because in the coming years, the zoning in general in our area is going to be under review, and that is by the Commission for Nature. And so if your application comes in while all of the zoning is under review and subject to change, then it could potentially, but not likely, but potentially get put on hold for 2 to 3 years. So it's really important for us to go ahead and apply and try to get approvals to be able to host weddings and do all of the improvements that we want to do to be able to do that this year. The building doesn't have to start immediately, but if we can get the permission before the zones are under review, then it could save us potential delay.
Yeah.
So in the process, we have, of course, employed an accountant, and we've met with this accounting team, and we have sent them all of our expenses and all of the spending that we've done to set up the bed and breakfast so far, and
the mileage.
Yeah, we had a long discussion with them about what would we like to do here in the beginning, and what would we like to do with weddings, and what potential event uses we'd like to have, and all of the things that Bo and I could even think of that we might need a special request for. Fireworks, having hay rides with animals and anything you can imagine. We said we want the ability to be able to do all of these things so that they can be informed and also tell us if we need special permissions or applications for those things. So we've done that and submitted it all, so they potentially have everything now that they need to go ahead and set up our business, do the business plan, work with the bank, acquire the KBIS number, and get us good to go there. And so that is done. So the general bed and breakfast business setup is underway. And then additionally, we've reached out to our architect connections to help us begin the application to have permission to do weddings and to basically get a building permit for our orangery so we can add the bathrooms and the ramps and the sewage system so that we can be compliant and able to host weddings in the future. And I think that one could potentially take 6 months, parts of it, for approval, but getting it done this year is important, so we're on top of that. And then the last thing that we have planned right away to do is to apply for it's called License 3, and that is the restaurant level alcohol license. And that, in the short term, is just so we can, sell bottles of wine to our guests when they stay here, and maybe a beer or something. But then in the future, so that we can serve alcohol for events and weddings.
I might drink the beer myself.
Okay. It's been a long process, a long, hard process. But we hope that you found something helpful in all of this. If you are looking in France for a property and you're thinking to do a bed and breakfast, there were just so many things that we didn't know and wished we had known before we started. So I hope it helped.